Our annual corruption survey is a good barometer for how our clients are dealing with the challenges of bribery and corruption. We surveyed 800 compliance professionals across the globe, and overall we see that companies are actually in agreement that bribery and corruption regulations are actually improving the business environment. Most have scaled up their procedures and tools to deal with the challenges of bribery and corruption, both on the prevention side and in dealing with cases. Let's take anti-bribery and anti-corruption, ABC training, as an example. As you know, it's one of the key building blocks to an effective program. It's considered best practice, it fosters a positive business environment, and it's considered by both US and UK regulators as a critical component of an effective program. The effectiveness, though, is very much dependent on how a company gets the message out there and embeds it in their culture. We've seen a major improvement in companies having a program. For example, German companies have doubled, and the percentage of French companies has tripled. But as I said, the quality of a program is just as important as the fact that it exists. In practice, we see that the form and the content really varies, and therefore so does the efficacy. As an example, an English language 30-minute e-learning program isn't going to equip your Russia team to deal with the day-to-day integrity operational challenges. And when we say training, I don't just mean mid-management and below. Training needs to start from the top. It's important to understand there's no one-size-fits-all. You need to think about your business and the risks to which you're exposed, both internally and externally, and see what works in practice. That's the crux with policies. They often look great on paper, but when you're trying to get a deal done in an emerging market, your zero-tolerance strategy may not quite work as you'd envisioned. Another important thing is that training needs to keep evolving. Your risks change, your business changes, and also employees may complain about training fatigue. So you need to keep evolving the content, format, and the impact of your training. Some clients think training is expensive, and in terms of the cost of training, I always like to talk to them about the famous Morgan Stanley case. One of their executives in China on the real estate side was found to be engaged in paying bribes to Chinese officials. Morgan Stanley was able to prove that they had a solid program in place, of which training was a key element. In fact, he'd been subject to training programs, I think, 7 times. The investment they'd made in the training program turned out to be worth every penny. They averted a potential crisis and saved their reputation. Today, Morgan Stanley is known as top drawer in compliance. The recent prosecution of cases under the FCPA clearly shows that the arsenal of procedures in place can be quite inefficient. They won't necessarily prevent bribes being paid, nor will they necessarily demonstrate to regulators that adequate diligence was applied, or beyond the regulatory aspect, ensure that business is done in an ethical and sustainable way. We see 2 major trends. First, readjustments of the internal controls, policies, and procedures, and secondly, a change in attitude to how the whole subject of ABC is approached. A smart and strategic approach to ABC can, for example, lead to a competitive advantage. If a company invests in meaningful integrity due diligence, as many of our M&A clients do, they will have access to enhanced information about the target. Not only will integrity due diligence provide adequate level of understanding about how the target is performing in terms of ethics, but also often information about the commercial value of the target and the company's global reputation. Our clients have to know if their prospective target is going to be subject to fines and penalties down the line. This will, after all, impact the company's value. Our survey actually showed that external due diligence is the single most common source of information, 27% of the time, that causes companies to pull out of deals because of corruption risk. But this has to happen up front. We also know from the majority of FCPA cases, compliance issues most often first came to light post-acquisition due diligence. Ideally, you'd like to be ahead of the game on that and have a solid due diligence process driven by real intelligence happening up front. Including anti-bribery and corruption due diligence in your strategic planning can give you a strong competitive advantage.